Hello and welcome. I'm Anand Naidu, filling in for Riz Khan. In the run-up to the first round of French elections that no one dares call, candidates are furiously getting in their last few days of speeches, rallies and digs at their opponents. No single theme defines the elections, but the issues of what it means to be French, immigration and unemployment have taken turns in the spotlight. Frontrunner and former Interior Minister Nicolas Sarkozy has a plan to overcome the crisis over the no vote that France gave 2 years ago to the European Constitution. Socialist hopeful Ségolène Royal tried to attract women voters, while far-right candidate Jean-Marie Le Pen continued his French First slogan from the streets of Paris. This Sunday, French voters will select from a pool of 12 candidates, and if no one wins a majority, as expected, the second round takes place on May 6th. Don't forget, we take your calls and text messages at the numbers that you see there on the bottom of your screen. Joining me now from Paris to discuss the upcoming French elections are Pierre Rousselin, the deputy editor of the French daily Le Figaro, and Cécile Leroux, analyst and spokesperson for the former independent candidate Rachid Nekaz. Welcome to both of you. Pierre Rousselin, let me start with you. There was an opinion survey that was published in a Paris daily this morning, which basically indicates that this presidential election is shaping up to be a two-horse race between Nicolas Sarkozy and Ségolène Royal. What's your take on it?
Well, that's probably the most probable situation. It's back to what the most logical outcome that is expected. Now, remember last time we also expected the same kind of situation with the right and the left being face to face, and there was a surprise. Mr. Le Pen got in for the second round, so we're not another surprise can happen this time.
Why do you think this election has been so difficult to call? The poll numbers have been swinging somewhat in the last few days.
Well, there's a tremendous number of people who don't know for whom they're going to vote. One can explain this because it's a very open election. We have new candidates, which is quite unusual. Usually you always have someone that is sitting, that is running again, or someone that has been running for a few times and who thinks this is the time he will win. This time we have new candidates, we have new faces, we have a new generation, and we have a whole different political situation with a centrist candidate, which is running behind the two main candidates, and for the first time, a woman on the Socialist ticket, which is something pretty new.
Cécile Leroux, what do you see as the main points of contention between these two top candidates?
Well, I think that your first question really points to the fact that there doesn't seem to be any main points. I think that there's a little bit of a gunshot approach on the part of the two main candidates. And if I may just interject that it's not really that clear that there are two main candidates, and what Mr. Rousselin mentions about Mr. Le Pen is more probable than we think. At least we believe that Mr. Le Pen has a high chance of passing to the second round. And so we're worried that the country is kind of falling for this kind of combination of different issues which essentially preys on their fears and makes them opt for what they see as some sort of a strength or some sort of a defense for their fears. But I do agree that the final decision has not been made for many, many voters. They really are quite in a bit of a disarray because they don't know who to vote for. And even though there are some new faces, these new faces are not of really very much importance, or at least enough importance for people to vote for them.
Well, let's look at Mr. Le Pen there for a moment. You mentioned that he could be one of the two that emerges after this first round. He's campaigned very much. He's in fact staked his career on campaigning on an anti-immigration ticket. Does that find some resonance with the French electorate, rather?
Well, unfortunately, it does, especially with the way that that it's presented. You know, I mean, it's when you have a country that slowly over the last couple of generations has had to accept the presence of immigrants. It's just human nature to have a little bit of a hard time with it. And what I, as spokesperson for Rachid Nekaz, believe is that the country has definitely, the ruling class has definitely not found a way to own the fact that this country is now a culturally diverse country. And it really has a difficult time helping the French average citizen integrate this population and accept it, integrate it into its corporate structure, integrate it into its political structure. So as a result, when you start preying on fears of insecurity as it was 5 years ago, and this year, when it's about that, it's about immigration and immigrant issues, people deep down in their hearts are very tempted to look for that. And that's why Le Pen is such a dangerous candidate, because people kind of secretly, more people than we think, secretly are attracted by this anti-immigration attitude.
Pierre, the immigration issue has also dogged Nicolas Sarkozy. During the riots in 2005 in some of the inner city areas that are populated by recent immigrants, by ethnic minorities, he became very, very unpopular. What kind of effect do you think this is going to have on him during this election?
Well, it cuts both ways. I mean, there's a lot of people who support also Sarkozy. I mean, you have to realize that he's in the lead. I think, you know, he's been running on this issue, because on the security issue, also on the immigration issue, and he's been taking some ground on Mr. Le Pen, which makes me believe that we won't have a rerun of last time, and I really don't see Mr. Le Pen getting into the second round. I see more of a possibility for the centrist candidate to make a good show this time. Now, Mr. Le Pen is always there. He's an old man. I think he's a little. He's not so much of a threat as he was as a politician. Now the issues are there, and they are part of the debate. Sure.
Well, we've looked at those two candidates who are on the right. Let's look at Ségolène Royal for a minute here. What does she bring to the table insofar as immigration policy is concerned, insofar as unemployment is concerned? Pierre, if I could put that to you first.
Well, she's a traditional socialist candidate. She made a big show, strong show when she was selected as the socialist candidate, when she managed to impose herself vis-à-vis the major leaders of the party. This was a surprise, and she is a new face. She's been running on this idea of being of bringing some young blood in the socialist ticket. She hasn't made, as far as I can see it, so many proposals of new proposals that might change the issue. But this may happen in between the two rounds.
Cécile, let me ask you this. How much popularity does Ségolène Royal have among immigrant communities, and what kind of influence do you think they will have in this election as far as their numbers are concerned?
Okay, well, firstly, I think that well, I have to agree a little bit with Pierre in the fact that she has as much attraction as the Socialist Party, as a traditional party with the expected ideas would have, even though throughout the pre-campaign, Ségolène has come out with some surprising ideas which didn't seem so socialist, and which put a little bit of a cold splash of cold water on things, such as proposals that young delinquents go to military-like compounds if they are caught red-handed. So it's difficult to read. I think that there is a temptation, and certainly people want to believe that that France is going in the right direction by appointing a woman candidate. However, there has been nothing specific and nothing particularly attractive to the immigrant population to make them really click with Ségolène Royal, who still appears as, though socialist, she still appears as a bit of an aristocratic lady who seems to have a lifestyle and opinions and a management style that doesn't really fit with what she's preaching.
Well, Cécile, talking about the direction that France is taking, we have an email here from Mohammed, who writes to us from Exeter in the United Kingdom. And she says, I'm a 27-year-old French Muslim lady wearing the veil who's been living in the United Kingdom for 5 years now, and I have to say that there is no way I would go back to France to live. No matter what Rousselin and Leroux tell you, France is becoming intolerant. Is France becoming intolerant? Cécile?
Well, unfortunately, I think it is. I think that France is slowly becoming more and more uncomfortable with its position as a multicultural society. And as a multicultural person myself, I notice it myself. So I understand the discomfort of this young woman, and it breaks my heart to see that people from France who could enrich the society and give the society a little more serenity by helping it admit its multiculturality are choosing to leave. I think that that's a very sad thing for France, and it's probably why we're starting to some candidates are starting to speak about very delicate issues such as national identity. Usually that is a sign that a country is in bad shape vis-à-vis its diversity when it starts speaking of cultural identity.
Okay, let's move on now to France's place in the world, international relations. Pierre, how do you think French relations with the United States would change if Nicolas Sarkozy becomes the new president?
Well, they'll probably change in the tone. The Chirac era and the war in Iraq were a moment that was of big crisis between France and the United States. So I think with the change in government, this kind of thing will change. There will be a more let's say, a more normal way of dealing with the United States diplomatic relations. I think on the real issues, little will change because the facts are there, and the policy of France is a long-term policy. It will not really change, except in the way it is presented, maybe less aggressive and more amenable to the U.S.
Well, we need to get back to the question of assimilation in France, because we're receiving emails on that. We've just received one. Cécile, I'd like to address this to you as well. And this is from Adola in Cape Town, South Africa. And he writes, why do you make a habit of attempting to impose your culture on others? I'm sure he's not referring to you here, Cécile. It says, why do you make a habit of attempting to impose your culture on others, particularly in this day and age? Is that what is happening in France right now, that others are trying to impose their culture in France?
It depends from which point of view. I'm wondering if he's saying, what point of view is he speaking of? Can you repeat what his name is? Perhaps I can guess his ethnic origin, if I may.
It's Adola from Cape Town in South Africa. I suspect he's looking at it from the point of view of the minority community in France.
Right, and of perhaps the French ruling class imposing its culture on immigrant communities.
Yes, I think I think
that's the question. Then I mean, this just comes back to what I was saying. There's a general discomfort. There's the case of the young woman who writes an email saying that she left. She left from France and she went to a country which is very nearby and where people of Muslim origin or of Muslim culture seem to be able to integrate into society a little bit more easily and seem to enter into the professional, into the professions such as doctor, lawyer, etc. a little bit more easily than they can in France, where it's difficult to have a high education as a member from an immigrant society because there is a little bit this imposition of, well, you know, if you're not really part of the old French club, I hate to say this, but then you're a little bit less accepted. If I may, I would like to use the example of ex-presidential candidate Rachid Nekaz, who was only 33 signatures shy of not receiving his 500 mayor's signatures to be a presidential candidate. This is truly an injustice, and it's he had 521 promises, and it was clear and it was proven even in a television report that it was due to pressures put upon the mayors not to promote the candidacy of a young man of Arabic origin. So we're very far from being able to cohabitate peacefully. And I think this is very sad because the French traditional population is a very cultured population. It has an absolutely wonderful and rich history. It has many reasons to be proud of itself, and it has a strong identity. And with this maturity and this identity, it should know how to open up. And it's one of our vocations to help France do that.
Well, we've looked at two, or rather three, of the main candidates. Let's look at the fourth candidate. He's in the wings, François Bayrou. Pierre, what kind of attraction does he hold for the electorate?
Well, the main attraction he has is that he's not he's not Sarkozy and he's not Ségolène Royal. I think that's the main attraction he has. He's from the center. He doesn't want to choose, and his whole program is to say that one shouldn't have to choose between the right on one side, the left on the other, and one should take all the best people from both sides. It's pretty idealistic, but it shows also that this election will probably be not, people will probably not vote only for somebody, but more so against someone. And this, we will see that, and we will see that on the second round.
Well, Cécile told us earlier that she expects Jean-Marie Le Pen to do well in the first round, that he could be one of the two candidates that goes forward, Nicolas Sarkozy and Le Pen. Pierre, what do you think the outcome will be after this weekend's voting?
Well, as we said before, at this point, the bets are that we will have Sarkozy, which I think will come first, come out first in the first round, and Ségolène Royal second, and probably Bayrou third. But that's
okay. I'm sorry. That's where we're going to have to leave it. We've run out of time. Pierre Rousselin, Cécile Leroux, thanks for joining us from Paris. Don't forget, if you have any thoughts about pressing issues around the world, send your emails to riz@aljazeera.net. See you next time. Street Talk is next.